This is a Film Stories original podcast.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hi everybody, John Bleasdale here. I just wanted to jump in quickly and say that because of a technical problem, there was a little difference to the audio. It's perfectly easy to listen to, there's no problem, but you will notice that there's a difference. Sounds like I'm on the end of a telephone compared to my guest, Brian Abrams, but the conversation is too good to let that get in the way, and so I'm putting it out anyway. But I just wanted to make sure you do not adjust your set because the problem is not on your end, but due to a fault of mine. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and I hope you don't let that distract you too much. Okay. Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Abrams, who is himself a writer, and we're going to be talking about that perennial question of Christmas, which is Die Hard a Christmas movie? But I promise that's not the only thing we're going to be talking about. Thanks for joining me, Brian.
Anytime. And yeah, I promise to avoid that topic as much as possible.
Excellent. Now, I've read your book in like, I think 2 sittings. I just raced through it because it's a Kindle single and it's a really entertaining read. But you've done quite a few of these oral histories, right?
Yeah. Die Hard and Oral History was my third of 4 oral histories I've done. Done them in 2014, I did one on the NBC years for Letterman when he was in the 12:30 slot. And then I did one on Gawker the following year. And then Die Hard was 2016, which every year results in me going on some podcast or picking up the phone for some newspaper to discuss whether or not Die Hard is like a baby Jesus movie, which is fine. And then I did one on the Obama presidency, and that came out in 2018. And then my most recent book came out in 2023 called You Talking to Me, The Definitive Guide of Iconic Movie Quotes. Did I get the title right? I fought on the title and lost. But that's a personal favorite too. It's just it's maybe marketed as the kind of book that I think, a film bro or the annoying sort of film bro who is constantly repeating movie quotes might get for Christmas. But the true secret sauce is it's actually for like real film geeks and gets you to take a deep dive into old Hollywood lore. It was my excuse for writing it. It was the movie quotes angle was my way of getting a publisher to say yes.
To something which would say more amorphous, and you can do what you want inside. Is that the idea?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think if I went to my publisher or my editor and I told them that I'm obsessed with Giallo and Joan Crawford and I want to articulate that in a book on Hollywood history, he would be like, that's not going to happen, but do you want to go get a beer and, tell me your troubles? But, movie quotes, that's something that's a very sellable and very broad. So, you could be a sicko like John or myself, or you could just be like someone's dad and you'd pick it up. I mean, I admit the publisher did an excellent job with the cover art. It's really grabby. So, yeah, they sold quite a few of those last year.
What got you into film originally? What was your sort of, have you always loved cinema since childhood, or was there a particular film that triggered a love of the movies?
Definitely since childhood. I can point to a number of awakenings throughout life where you sort of, become like the monolith appears for you after a certain viewing, and you become enlightened on a whole other level, for better or for worse. Hopefully you don't become like such an inaccessible shit at happy hour for your normal friends who don't want to hear it. But I think if I were on a therapist's couch now, I could point to, first off, everyone likes movies. I mean, I think it's pretty common, but especially for me, I'm like kind of a late Gen Xer, but I could point to my parents' laissez-faire attitude in parenting, right? They weren't people who necessarily were shoving me and my brother out the door to play sports or putting a book in my hands. And they let us do what we wanted to do, which in their mind was like a very kind of socially liberal, hip thing. But the truth is they just had their own lives. And we also had cable. So, what I'm articulating is a recipe for kids who are sitting down and watching Revenge of the Nerds and Police Academy 100,000 times. And eventually, when you turn 14 years old in 1992, you're just old enough to align and peripherally understand the renaissance that's happening in film. And you see Reservoir Dogs, and you see One False Move, and you talk your father into taking you into a double feature of El Mariachi and Bad Lieutenant, and then you discover this man named Abel Ferrara, and you go down that path, and then everything just kind of takes off from there. How about you? I'm sure you've told the story 100 times by now.
Well, it's so funny that you mentioned the monolith straight away, because I remember as a child, sort of 2001: A Space Odyssey being on one sort of Saturday afternoon, and while I was at my uncle's and aunties, and I had to sort of say to them, I've seen half of this film, and I was really precociously young. I was really little, but it was just basically, I demand to have the television set for 2.5 hours while this is on. And I made such a big deal out of it. It was almost like, for a while, I suspected myself. Did I have to, insist that this was an important part of me in order to watch the film, or was watching the film making it an important part of me? Right. It was kind of a weird, I had the same feeling when I got glasses very young, that I couldn't work out whether I just wanted to have glasses and ruin my eyesight, or I had bad eyesight and I needed the glasses after all. So
that's really funny. Side note, I started having to wear glasses about a decade ago, and the minute I started wearing them, I think this is straight out of a Larry David episode too. People do treat you differently. All of a sudden,
in what way?
Well, suddenly you feel the impression around people that they regard you as smarter. That's all. I felt that in many rooms I walked into. All of a sudden, I'm a smart guy. The month before, I'm a bimbo like everybody else. And I'm still the same dumbass either way.
Brilliant. And the weird thing is as well, I went the opposite way. I went and had the laser treatment. So now I walk into the room and I'm basically treated like Patrick Swayze.
I'm jealous. I'm going to do that next.
It only lasts for a little while, not because it wears off or anything, but because the doctor just says, you just get old and your eyes wear out anyway. So there's only, it's only so long that you're going to get without having to put on a pair of glasses again. So,
enjoy
that happens.
Yeah.
Enjoy it while it lasts was the message. So let's get to writing about film. What was the point where you sort of switched from being somebody who was watching Police Academy, and you've already mentioned, Abel Ferrara, and God, so some of those films you just mentioned, actually, One False Move. That's a film you don't hear cited much, but what an absolutely amazing film that was.
Yeah, well, I think about 1992 as a flashpoint for me, because my brother and I religiously read Entertainment Weekly and Rolling Stone, not to diss Premiere, but for whatever reason that was not part of our media diet. The phrase media diet did not exist then, and it shouldn't exist now. But I remember Peter Travers' top 10 that year. Was it a top 10 or a summer preview? I'm positive. No, it was definitely a top 10. And on that list, so I'm going to have to fact check myself later. How does that sync up with my dad taking me to see Bad Lieutenant when it came out? Perhaps he had a review separate from that came out earlier that I caught too. But in the top 10, Travers had Reservoir Dogs, Bad Lieutenant, One False Move, Brothers Keeper was this documentary that hit around then, The Player from Robert Altman, and I'm trying to think what else. A number of other the key movies. I want to look it up while we're here, actually. But at the same time, I was kind of having my own little letterbox to myself in like a little journal. Okay, here we go. Here is the top 10 for Peter Travers in 1992. Are you ready?
Yeah, go.
Okay. The Player is at number 1. Actually, should I do it from 10 to 1?
Yeah, do that.
All right, here's Peter Travers' top 10, Rolling Stone, 1992. And number 10, A Few Good Men. 9, Bad Lieutenant. 8...
Saw at the cinema.
Yeah. 8, Glengarry Glen Ross.
Saw at the cinema.
Watched it 1,000 times on tape, yeah.
Such a good film.
7, Reservoir Dogs. 6, Husbands and Wives.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, I just rewatched that the other night and had to log it on Letterboxd as The Dark Side of When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
5, Malcolm X.
Amazing.
4, Howard's End. And I'm a big Ivory Merchant guy. 3, The Crying Game. 2, Unforgiven, and 1, The Player. So that's a banner year. And that'll I mean, 14 is young to comprehend most of those, but nonetheless, it's going to take you along for the ride and get your motor going, I would think. But yeah, go ahead.
Back when mainstream cinema was kind of dangerous and spoke about adult themes and adult subjects, and we're talking mainstream films there. All of those films, with the exception maybe of Bad Lieutenant, were really sort of popular sort of Hollywood cinema. Unforgiven and Malcolm X, and they were all. I saw all of them on the cinema. Howard's End, I saw all of those on the cinema.
It was a great time because. You had also the, Sundance was on fire at this point. Like Sex Lies videotape in '89 was the thing that kicked them off. But by '92, and with Reservoir Dogs, it sort of made the Sundance brand more commercialized and less of like an eating your vegetables kind of art film where it's about a documentary about lesbians who are like making wheat in Thailand or whatever it is that was like sort of the negative connotations with, pedantic type indie titles. And all of a sudden you're dealing with, Carl Franklin and Tarantino. And I know that Tarantino famously back then denigrated Merchant Ivory to benefit his movies, right? He would make fun of the costume dramas that the Academy would always sort of rain praise on. And on some level, he's right. But Howard's End and Remains of the Day are both bangers. It's just that you had this moment where people garnered more interest in indie films. They kind of were able to meld into the mainstream along with the Unforgivens and A Few Good Men I'm not exactly a fan of, but I can appreciate why people dig it. Malcolm X, I remember distinctly Spike Lee making a stink with Warner Brothers having Norman Jewison assigned to direct it, and they understood that they were fucking up and brought him in. Anyway, a great moment for all of that. So
absolutely. And then you so at what point did you start writing? What was the move that you thought, okay, I'm gonna put pen to paper and publish my thoughts?
Right. Well, I think I got into, this is going to make me sound 100 years old. I started getting into film writing or just journalism in early to mid 2000s, I was freelancing for a local alt weekly, and started freelancing for Maxim and a couple of food sites and MrSkin.com when they used to pay $300 a pop. And that was just a way to explore, to interview directors from teen sex comedies and sort of just talk to them about 80s morality.
Right.
So it wasn't just about tits. I mean, it was, but it was hopefully less surfacey than.
So you weren't the person who was basically spotting where somebody revealed their private parts.
No, yeah, right. Where you, for those in the audience who are not familiar with MrSkin.com, it was this website. I guess it still exists, where you could pay a membership. I don't know how they got around the legal loopholes on this one, but you could look up any nude scene you wanted. So if you wanted to look up, I don't know, Blame It on Rio with, I believe, was that Demi Moore, and was her name Michelle Williams? Let me look this up if I remember that correctly.
I just remember Michael Caine. See, I watch it for Caine.
Oh, right. Well, Michelle Johnson was her name. But anyway, yeah, you could, the site has like every video clip, and at the 48-minute mark, there's someone's in the shower and this, that, and the other. So that was it. But they had this, but they had like an editorial supplement to it. And the editor, Mike McPadden, who's no longer with us, he had worked at a number of like film publications, and I forgot how exactly we connected. And I just started pitching him on different sort of film ideas. And I was infatuated with this one teen sex comedy from '82 called The Last American Virgin, which is really...
I remember the title, but I don't think I ever saw it.
So it is the American adaptation of a series of successful Israeli teen sex comedies from the late 70s called Eskimo Limon, which means lemon popsicle. And it was from this director named Boaz Davidson, who ended up coming to America, and I believe he started directing for Canon or for Golan Globus or for one of those outfits. And Last American Virgin was his sort of, he just kind of did a smattering of all of the Israeli versions of his films for the American audiences. And it has an amazing soundtrack, and it's really bold in a strange way. And that's like the Israeli sort of sensibility of just kind of being unafraid with nudity in the way that I think Americans we're just still puritanical and suppressed and shy and fucked up. But you know, at least we don't genocide. Well, actually we do. But if I remember correctly, the film came out the same month as, or around the same time as Fast Times. Fast Times also did not do well in the box office. But at any rate, it is a gem. And I mean, if you catch it on cable, or I'm sure I bet someone has uploaded a version of it to YouTube. It's worth checking out. It's not exactly what you might think it is. It's not the screwballs or zapped or joysticks where it's just a little like brainless titty comedy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it does sort of operate on a little more of sort of what is the phrase that I'm looking for? Just kids learning the rules of life the hard way.
Right. It's sort of more like attached to the real world in some way.
I think so. But I ended up doing a couple of stories on that for Mr. Skin while writing for a newspaper. Eventually, I made my way to New York and worked for a magazine and ran a couple of sites. And then in the 2010s, I started finding my way into books somehow. And I'm still here. I'm not like sleeping in Central Park just yet.
That's the bar which you've got to get over.
Yeah.
Keep yourself out of Central Park.
As far as I'm concerned, yeah.
I mean, that's top hobo real estate, man.
Exactly.
If you're gonna be a hobo, it would be Central Park hobo, Manhattan. I mean,
no question about it.
Look at us laughing at the homeless. What a wonderful Christmas sentiment we're spreading here. In Italy, I'm based in Italy. In Italy, the Christmas movie, our It's a Wonderful Life, is Trading Places.
Remarkable.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's they've re-released it at the cinema this year because it's such a popular movie at Christmas.
Where in Italy are you?
I'm in northeast, near Venice and Padua, that sort of region.
I would have never suspected that. I would have hoped for that Edwige Fenech might have been in some crazy sex comedy where she had to cover her nipples up with wreaths or something like that. I'm sure she has.
We have that as well.
Yeah,
but that's not the It's a Wonderful Life.
I had no idea that Trading Places was that for Italians.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah. I once did an article on The Economist of different countries having different... And there's in Germany, there's a short film in English, which is shown every Christmas and is basically there's lines from this film which are... which you can say to a German in English because the film is not translated or subtitled. It's only in English. And I don't think it's even ever been shown in England. Nobody in England knows about this film. And that's the It's a Wonderful Life of Germany.
Oh, that's a really good premise for an article. So what is it for London? Please don't say Love Actually. Is it really Love Actually for British people?
I think that's a good one. I think in England there's just too much choice, really. I think definitely things like The Muppets Christmas Carol has become, a very choice
good pick
selection. It's a Wonderful Life will definitely, get a repeat viewing. And then there's sort of those films that just pop up around holiday time, like Where Eagles Dare, which just have snow in them. And then it's not got anything to do with Christmas at all, but there's snow in them. So, you get to hear Richard Burton saying broadsword to Danny Boy, broadsword to Danny. And it's it's Christmas.
This is a decent segue for us to discuss probably what is now become the quintessential, at least American, if not elsewhere, I'm sure elsewhere, people celebrate the holidays by watching John McTiernan's Die Hard.
There you go, you see. It's almost as if I'd scripted it from the very beginning. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this whole thing about Die Hard, I don't think of Die Hard as a Christmas movie. I think saying that Die Hard is a Christmas movie is a sign that it's Christmas. It's just hearing people start to say, is Die Hard a Christmas? Oh, God, is it? It's October. Wait at least until November before we get into the discourse.
Yeah, well, I'm a little more... self-centered when the discourse hits because despite my social anxiety with posting shamelessly about something that I reported on 8 years ago, when the Die Hard is a Christmas movie discourse begins, to me I'm like, oh, well, I'm supposed to get out there and self-promote like an asshole. But clearly the discourse itself is annoying only because some time ago when social media fully evolved. I guess it's always ever evolving, but someone out there made what they believed was a clever comment about Die Hard, being this non-traditional sort of idea of what a holiday film is, and they're correct, but it is annoying. Yes, it is true. It is a holiday film. Can we please move on? But whatever. People want to watch it. They want to celebrate it. I mean, I rewatched it. 2-3 weeks ago. Okay, I've watched it twice in the last month, and I hadn't seen it in a couple of years, and I loved it so much. It was so much fun for so many reasons. So I get it. I totally understand why people are in the mood for it. Yeah.
It was released in the summer, though, right? Was it a summer release?
Right, July of '88, and I assume that Christmas was the premise from the book that it was originally based on, or excuse me, it was a setting for Nothing Lasts Forever, this kind of mediocre novel from the late '70s, written by Roderick Thorpe, and there has been so many iterations of the novel to script until it finally got in the hands of everyone on the set on the Fox lot in whatever months they shot that. I want to say late 87, early 88, something like that is when actual production was. And it was by the time it probably went through so many iterations, while they're filming it, it becomes incidental to them that is a Christmas movie, which is why it feels ironic for us, or at the time, whoever made the clever comment a decade ago on Twitter that it's a Christmas movie, because it was just not conscious of anyone really. Yes, Let It Snow plays. Yes, there's a Christmas theme running throughout. There's a family theme running throughout. There's the ho 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 dead Tony in the elevator. But yeah, it's not consciously a Christmas movie in the way that other kind of twee films are consciously Christmas movies.
It's funny that the Let It Snow was, you mentioned in your book, was actually a sort of joke on the part of someone in the editing department, just putting the song on over the end as a kind of joke. Yeah,
Frank Uriosti, the editor, had that as a placeholder when they were doing previews in summer of '88. And they just assumed they would fill it in with something later on. But the scorecards were so high, and it was fitting, especially with all of the barabons floating from the top window and actually looking like snow. I mean, that, again, with Frank, I don't even think, I have to go back and look at the transcript, I don't even think he consciously made that decision. I think it was just a plug-in. And it works perfectly, so they just left it in. Mm-hmm.
I love that the format of this book as well. I love the format of oral histories generally, but there's something really enjoyable about the sort of breadth of the people you talk to, that you get people talking who producers, people who have fairly small parts. I love, what's the name of the actor? Is it William Atherton, the guy who was in Ghostbusters?
Yes.
And Sugarland Express, and he plays one of the FBI. Is he an FBI guy or a reporter?
He is the douchebag broadcast reporter Dick Thornburg, who invades the McLean home and gets the little children on air to say, come home, mommy and daddy. And he played the EPA slimebag in Ghostbusters. Now, interestingly enough, this is very this is such a Reaganite zeitgeist in which an EPA bureaucrat is a villain and a journalist is a villain. This is a very libertarian mindset and both the movies frame those characters so well that it doesn't matter. I'm willing to roll with it. But in my political reality, those are very necessary roles that our society needs. And there's a reason why that EPA hat is telling you to shut down the ghost toilet in the basement or whatever. And there's a reason why, Dick Thornburg as a character in Die Hard 1 should have not threatened the housekeeper in order to break into the McLean home and get comment from children. That was a huge no-no. But in part 2, he does the world a major service by uncovering the massive terrorism plot at Dulles International when the control tower of the airport is suppressing that information from thousands of holiday travelers. Who's the fascist there? I mean,
it's so funny that he starts off and you see him in. I mean, he's already kind of got the ball rolling, appearing in Sugarland Express as the lead. And in that, alongside Goldie Hawn, he's the kind of outlaw character. He's the quintessential 70s outsider who's, who should be, who you're rooting for. And then, as you say, come the 80s, he's playing a series of characters, all called Dick, unimaginatively.
Oh, that's really funny. I should probably take a moment and just discuss the oral history as a format.
Yeah, please.
But just assuming there may be a listener out there who's not completely familiar, the I guess the easiest way to distinguish it from just a normal prose work of nonfiction that's paragraph after paragraph is that this book, which is digital only, is told through interviews. So I had pursued everyone involved in what I perceive to be the Die Hard story, and that's a scope larger than the making of, and we can discuss that. But I went out and spoke with people involved in the cast and crew, as well as producers in Hollywood who may have been involved in the development of it, friends or foes. And through my transcripts, I sort of assembled this kind of giant jigsaw puzzle that just kind of takes you on a ride, and it begins with Bruce Willis as an unknown, as a bartender on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, nicknamed Bruno, playing the harmonica, to his TV stardom in Moonlighting. And there's this second track that's happening, narrative track that's happening. It is kind of a complicated constellation, actually, but that's why I loved putting this one together, because I really do feel like it worked well. There's this second narrative track that's happening where you're seeing producers in Hollywood kind of begin to circle around the Die Hard script and understand the action projects that they've been working on, and you're kind of seeing the story of this new strain of action movie that begins to evolve out of what we traditionally think of as like the 80s testosterone fueled popcorn Hollywood movie. What are we talking about? Schwarzenegger, Stallone, eventually Van Damme's ass shows up, but Chuck Norris is in there, that son of a bitch, all of that. But there's this other strain that begins to break off, and it has a little comedy to it, and it's a little more self-aware, and its politics aren't as stringent, and it starts with 48 Hours as a kind of modern buddy comedy. It takes the formula of Butch and Sundance and puts it in like a modern setting that we as moviegoers in the 80s get. And it's a little less naive than when Paul Newman and Robert Redford were running around in that particular production. And so from 48 Hours, you begin to see like Lethal Weapon ends up happening, and Die Hard is kind of the I think among all those productions, and there's many more that we can talk about through that strain, but those are like the big ones, I think. Die Hard is really the one where like everyone is firing on all cylinders in a really serendipitous way. And I think it's no hyperbole to say that when you look at like monumental American action movies, or I don't even say American, in the history of film, right? Like major points of action movie history, I'm going to point to Stagecoach in 39. And please, John, jump in when I'm going to need you for a couple of gaps. But the ones that immediately come to mind: Stagecoach in 39, Rio Bravo, whenever that came out, 58, 59, Goldfinger, 64. And I'm going to point Die Hard in 88. I'm sure there's
maybe
more.
The French Connection we could put in somewhere. As, The French Connection has an amazing car chase in it, and is a policier of...
that's true. I didn't even think about the car chase shit, because then, there's that conversation to be had about Bullet and French Connection. You're right. Right. And so, but, I'm sure there's others. That's a really good one for the 70s, yeah. But anyway, Die Hard is right up there in that conversation, like, without question.
Yeah. I wonder if Wild Bunch would be a good call for a action movie. It's not necessarily mentioned in the same breath as Die Hard, but it's definitely a film which is a series of set pieces of action set pieces.
Yeah, it counts. I guess I feel I'm such
in the end and the bridge, and the train,
and the finale. Yeah, of course. Like I like. Wild Bunch is an all-time for me, and I think I'm like being a snob about it, that it's transcendent for me. It like belongs above the action genre, which is so snobby, because what's that about? I mean, action movies should be in the same conversation as anything else. What? And actually I do feel that way about Die Hard too. I mean, script wise, that belongs in the pantheon with Casablanca and The Apartment and Chinatown or whatever other screenplays you deem as like top tier. The Verdict, Witness, take your pick.
What I love about the approach of the oral history in this particular case as well is you can allow all those different voices that have come together in the production and in the making of the film. And they disagree. They fundamentally disagree about, like, who came up with this line. It was Bruce Willis on the day. I wrote it 3 months ago. Joel Silver suggested it. So you have these 3 or 4 different versions, and doing the oral history, you can just go, okay, these are the 3 or 4 different versions. You make your mind up.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's deliberate too. I mean, when you enter into the conversations with people, and hopefully people are generous with their time, and sometimes you can ask some broad questions and they just like go off, and you let them riff and don't step on what they say. Just let them alone. But then there are other times, when someone makes a pointed assertion, I did X on this day, and then that people in that immediate vicinity of that episode, you go to them. I mean, you're supposed to go to them anyway. That's just kind of standard journalism on some level, to get comment and color from them as well. And then you've hit something when they butt up against that, and they're like, wrong. I was the one responsible for, the TV dinner line in the air duct or whatever it was.
Absolutely. I mean, it's and the people who you're talking to a lot of the producers, you're talking to a lot of the sort of actors who are around. You don't get Bruce.
No.
I imagine, well, obviously for medical reasons these days. Were you tempted to sort of drop in some quotes from, old interviews that he'd done, or did you want everything to just be fresh?
Yeah, that's a big no-no for me. 2 things. A, I remember Bruce at the time, my reporting for the Die Hard Oral History was most of 2015, and then it was published, I believe, June 2016. And Bruce was on Broadway with Laurie Metcalf. They were doing Misery, and I went to see him. In fact, Stephen King was in the audience the night I was there, and he's so tall. When he got up to leave, everyone was just like in awe, gasping, watching him like walk up the aisle. It was really funny. And but no, I tried my best to get through to Bruce's army of people, and even slipped a note to the green room. By the way, that's a good trick that can work sometimes, is if like the best way to circumvent people's armies is if they're ever like on stage, that green room note like that, just mail something to it, snail mail it. The assistant at the theater you never know, but it didn't work out. But yeah, I got a number of people involved that could paint enough of a picture. I feel fine with it. But to answer your other question, no, that's a big no-no. I would never want to borrow. And I think I see that sometimes where people say it's the oral history of XYZ, and then they use secondary sources. They use an interview that someone gave. Let's just make up a hypothetical, right? So let's say it's Babe Pig in the City, the oral history. And
that's such a good film.
I've never seen it. I should see it, but I don't know why that just popped into my head. But and let's say they couldn't get James Cromwell for the oral history. So then, when did Babe Pig in the City come out? 98, 99, somewhere around there?
Yeah, around about then, yeah.
Okay, so let's say that you go back and they use the interview he gave to Entertainment Weekly, and they slip it into the oral history with a footnote that says, at the bottom, hey, this line was actually part of the interview he gave 25 years ago. Well, then it cannot be an oral history, because the purpose of an oral history is to give the participants and principals of the topic the opportunity to reflect back. That's the point. You can't have an oral history when something just literally happened. And so that is
when they're doing the junket, so they're
right.
It's a different context.
Right.
They're selling the movie. They're not reflecting on the movie.
Right. And so there's the opportunity to reflect is just, it's a way different perspective. And And the Letterman oral history for that spoke to me so clearly when I was putting that together, from people in writers' rooms who were making pioneering efforts for late night TV in the 80s, and now had the opportunity to crane their necks backward and see what has happened over the years after all the late night wars. After, whoever has come and gone, whatever hosts have come and gone, Jimmy Kimmel is now, whoever, Eric Andre is on Adult Swim now, so everyone can observe how things have evolved and devolved and have the opportunity to comment. I mean, that's far more interesting to me. And so,
absolutely.
I would never insert like some, and I don't even mean that from like it's not even coming from a place of pride of like, oh, I want it to be all original. It's just, I feel the assignment demands it to be all original.
Right. I get you. I remember reading a book. It's no writer who has been on this podcast, by the way. So I'm not going to spill any beans on people. But all the quotes that were given from the principal, and it wasn't saying it was an oral history, so there was no sense it was. But all of the quotes were from a Cigar Monthly interview, and I was just sort of thinking, I mean, this is a director who has given plenty of interviews. There's material out there. Yeah. Why are you just taking it from this one Cigar Monthly? This was it just struck me as a very weird sort of choice of that's where your secondary source is coming from. You must have.
Well, if it's Cigar Aficionado, once upon a time they used to pay extremely well for their features. I mean, this is 25 years ago or longer. And those would be long-form interviews where they probably got people off guard. They got people at minute 40 of the interview to start talking shit in a way that they wouldn't in a 15-minute junket interview or wherever else. This Cigar Aficionado was podcasting. The way that Playboy interview, it's similar to that. If that's the same magazine you're thinking of.
Okay. So asked and answered. Excellent. Now I stand corrected with that one, because I was always perplexed by that, because it's a good book, but I was always perplexed by why that was the secondary source that seemed to be relied on for the principal person who, the director of the film that the whole book was about. Anyway, let's get back to Die Hard. There's another action film, Big in the City, and obviously George Miller's Fury Road would be up there in the pantheon. What makes Die Hard so exemplary to you? What are the ingredients which for you push it beyond the films which surround it, sort of the Schwarzeneggers, you mentioned a few that come out that year, Rambo 3 and Red Heat, and that don't do so well, and sort of show maybe the appeal of those actors to be flagging somewhat.
There is a precision with which the Die Hard narrative is executed that Rambo 3 or Red Heat can't touch. And that's just one layer of Die Hard. That's before we add on the next layer of like the humor that is brought in. And then we can add the layer of Bruce's stardom. And then we can add McTiernan's wit in directing. But at the foundation, you have a script from two men, Jeb Stewart and Stephen E. D'Souza, who have very different sensibilities, both senses of humor, but they both brought something really fantastic. Jeb Stewart, I would say his other amazing script is The Fugitive in 1993.
Right.
He brought in just a real skeleton of that there was something behind these set pieces. It's not just the C4 exploding in the elevator shaft. He brought in the beginning elements of John McClane getting in a fight with his wife, and then bad things happen, and now he has to make up for it. And there are and then Stephen E. D'Souza came in and kind of gave it the 48 hours flavor, buddy cop-esque flavor that Joel Silver Productions had at that point kind of been known for. I mean, they're really known for that now, but like back then, it was within Hollywood. People understood like that he had kind of a formula going, and so D'Souza brought in like a ton of the humor, and he's also really good at cracking the code on different plot devices. It seems when you're watching the movie, you may not realize it. You may not even realize it when you go to the fridge that night. But you know, you look at fists with your toes on the airplane, sets up shoot the glass 45 minutes later, right? There is a reason why he went barefoot, and that is also something that signifies him as you know, the underdog in this scenario. He's not Stallone, who is invincible and can take on 9 guys in 5 seconds. Every hit and every kill counts. And in fact, when he kills Tony, I believe that's his first terrorist he kills, it's accidental. He has him in a headlock and they roll down a flight of stairs. Tony's neck breaks incidentally. And that sets up Alexander Goodenough as an excellent sub-villain who is super pissed and has it out for McClane because his brother is dead. You have the relationship at the beginning when Argyle is driving McClane to Nakatomi Plaza. He hangs out in the garage because he's waiting for the call from McClane to know whether things are cool with him and the wife or not. And he doesn't get the call, but he's hanging out because they made a bond together, they got along together, and also he's going to get a good tip. So like all of these little small things along the way set up for what happens in, you know, Acts 2 and Acts 3. The Apartment with Billy Wilder is very similar in that way, where it's just this Swiss watch. Everything is just kind of connected in this beautiful way. So once you look at that, like, try to show me a script for Commando or for First Blood Part 2 or you know, whatever else, and nothing touches this shit. I mean, that's where the conversation begins.
Even like down to the terrorists being bank robbers, and I love the Alan Rickman line about I read about them in a magazine. I read about this in a, you know, there's a real humor. There's a real sort of casual like we just tossed this idea off, but
Yeah.
in fact, your book shows that that's actually a fundamental change that John McTiernan wanted to have. He thought terrorists just weren't fun.
Yeah, and so this is where everyone's firing on all cylinders. And yeah, like you said, that's where part of the levity also comes in. Is McTiernan, the director, recognized that terrorists are just a downer. I mean, the novel Nothing Lasts Forever is these terrorists are politically motivated, and it's the novel's even more dour than that, because the John McClane of the book, his name is Joe Leland in the book, is actually in his 50s rather than, you know, McClane, I guess you would say he's probably 35 in Die Hard, something like that maybe. Joe Leland is going to his daughter's Christmas party in L.A., so there's not even a romance element. And the daughter gets dropped off the building at the end. I mean, it's just such a... So this is why the novel got passed by script analysts when it made its first couple of rounds, because it just felt just like a bummer until one of the analysts, Dan Mazur, who worked for Larry Gordon, well, we can get into producers later if you want, but nonetheless, he happened to see something in it. He saw elements that spoke to kind of the 80s action moment and recognized that there was something here to play with. But yeah, McTiernan knew to make them thieves instead of terrorists, to keep, let's sell some popcorn, you know.
I love the fact as well, talking about the novel, that Frank Sinatra was in The Detective, which was also based on a novel by the same writer. And I remember hearing, I think this might be a factoid, as in an untrue piece of information, that Sinatra was offered the role because it was like almost like a contractual obligation that they had to offer him the sequel.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but I couldn't verify that at all. But so the story goes. So Roderick Thorpe had this Joe Leland character in, you know, multiple novels, and The Detective was one that he wrote in the 60s. Nothing Lasts Forever was the follow-up that happened years and years later. And they did make it might have been Fox as well in the 60s. Who cares? But anyway, The Detective came out in the late 60s. Sinatra was cast in it. I dare anyone to try to get through it. And yeah, there is this idea that somehow they needed to like offer it contractually to Sinatra in 1986 when production was underway, or 85 when pre-production. I mean, there's just no way. And there's no way that's happening. So, I mean,
it feels like an invented rule as well. I mean, there are plenty of films which repeat characters, and then they don't belong to the actor who played them the first time. That seems like suddenly that's a rule that's never existed before.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Look, I'm not an IP lawyer, but I would imagine there's no judge in California that would look at this and go, "Oh, yeah, this is clearly part of the Detective franchise." No, it's just material that gets adapted and used elsewhere. But yeah, and no one I spoke with was able to verify the Sinatra thing at all. I mean, to them, that just felt like a piece of internet ephemera that just kind of happens, and people just go along with it because you hear it for so much. Because you hear it for so much. What?
Yeah, if you hear it repeated enough times, then you think, okay, that there must be something in it. Mm-hmm. But the couple of, the book is, for such a short book, it's absolutely jammed with some great stories and tidbits. I loved the Alan Rickman falling story, and I loved the guy getting his brains blown out story. Those were the two that have stuck with me particularly. This is Alan Rickman supposed to drop on 3.
What was the story about the
brains?
Yeah.
That's when the terrorists shoot their first victim. He sort of has McTiernan wires him up so he has a big chunk of his head flies off and hits the glass. And he's saying, you make sure you get brains. I want to see brains. And they're saying, why do you want it? Why do you want it to be so gory? And he says, I want to give the MPAA something to cut, so that they'll cut that and then they'll leave the rest of it.
Right. I remember now. So James Shigeta, who played Takagi. That's right. They needed to bait the censors to make them feel that they've done their job. That's right. And then obviously Rickman, with the big fall and that face being so convincing, was because they were going to drop him on 3, but or so he believed. And then the stunt coordinator told the person holding him to drop him on 1. And yeah, that's where that freeze frame just feels so real. But yeah, there's another. I mean, I think your listeners may enjoy the oral history just sort of to understand the ramp up into the production. And then I spent the least amount of time on the production itself, right? Because I want to talk about that sort of the constellation of events that I had mentioned earlier that led to the making of Die Hard. And then afterward, you get an understanding of Die Hard as a phenomenon and Die Hard as the formula, right? The copycats, the umpteen copycats, which I find fascinating. And I mean, I enjoy them. Some are better than others, obviously. None compared to Die Hard, but there is a formula.
Yeah, there's sort of like Die Hard on a bus is speed, right?
Right. I mean, the Die Hard formula is pretty simple. It's a sandwich, right? There's a not to be confused with Walter Hill stew. Walter Hill stew is something different. That's like a group of dudes who are boxed in or who go upriver a little too far. There's almost something Deliverance-esque with the Walter Hill films like The Warriors, Southern Comfort, Trespass. They all live in that world where it's protagonists who end up where they shouldn't and have to get out. And Die Hard is slightly different. Die Hard is a sandwich because you have a lone wolf in the middle who is stuck in between terrorists and the authorities. And the authorities, this is specific to the recipe, the authorities have to be hostile to the lone wolf. And that is why yeah, when you do end up having, Die Hard on a plane, Passenger 57, Die Hard on an aircraft carrier, Under Siege, Die Hard on a mountain, Cliffhanger, as you mentioned, Die Hard on a bus, Speed, there is a legitimate debate about whether or not those films are true to the recipe. In Speed, whatever Keanu Reeves' name was in it, Jack Traven, something like that, right? He is in cahoots with the cops. Joe Morton and Jeff Daniels are on they're on walkie-talkies or cell phones with him. I forget exactly what, but they're copacetic. They're helping him, and that is what makes it. I mean, the argument goes, not a Die Hard film, but I'm personally not a stickler for it. I recognize the skeleton of a Die Hard formula. Just roll with it. Let's not be too uptight about this shit.
Absolutely, yeah. And to me, there's an element of almost like the TV show bottle episode feel to Die Hard. It's this confined area,
yes,
and a series of problems and a series of solutions.
Yes,
I mean, brilliantly done. The absolute template for how to do it extremely well. But it has that kind of structure to it, in my view. And
which is why Die Hard 3, 4, and 5 are not Die Hard films, or at least you could say Die Hard 3, 4, and 5 are less of a Die Hard film than something like Speed is. I mean, John McClane exists in 3, 4, and 5. Well, at least I could say a well-written John McClane exists in 3, 4, and 5. Those are just Bruce Willis movies. But yeah, those are movies that, I mean, I suppose 3 you can give some slack by saying, look, this is the third Die Hard. The so-called confined space is New York City this time.
Right.
I mean, they're stretching it a little, but I get it. By the third film, you're like, all right, we have to outdo the 3 planes that blew up in the second one. So where do we go from here? But just saying, I'm putting it out there that Sudden Death with Jean-Claude Van Damme is more of a Die Hard movie where he's at the Stanley Cup and sticking terrorist face in the doesn't he put it in like a vat of grease or something like that? That's more of a Die Hard film than Die Hard 3.
Right. I always felt the air went out of that movie at a certain point. The whole moment.
In Die Hard 3?
Yeah. The whole setup at the beginning is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's really well done, and there's a real paranoid tension, and it almost feels like a 70s movie. It has that sort of shot on real streets feel to it. Yeah. And then the minute it sort of has helicopters and stuff, it's just like, oh, they can go anywhere now.
I totally agree.
It doesn't feel like it's James Bond.
Yeah, I mean, it has a touch of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and then then when Jeremy Irons shows up to rob the Federal Reserve, and once we start exiting Manhattan, I mean, the film loses steam altogether. But I love watching McClane hauling ass in a cab across Central Park, running up and down the avenues of Manhattan. But yeah, once we leave the city proper, then you're just kind of checked out, and you definitely understand that the film itself is checked out, and that they had trouble with the sort of putting the script together. It was based on a novel, and then by the time that this is not an oral history, this is just something I sort of stumbled upon when working on the Movie Quotes book last year, because I spoke with William Wisher, who was James Cameron's hometown friend. They co-scripted The Terminator decades and decades ago. And Wisher was hired for on-set rewrites for Die Hard 3 because of the troubles they were having with production. The plot lines went nowhere, it didn't make any sense, and as we mentioned, it just didn't feel like a Die Hard movie should feel. So there's a really kind of funny anecdote where they brought back John McTiernan to direct Die Hard 3. And there's this moment in the hotel room after the production wrapped that afternoon, and it's just McTiernan and William Wisher and Bruce Willis, and they're worn out. dejected, days and days and days of trying to piece together things on the fly, rewriting as they go, which if you watch the movie again, you will say to yourself, this absolutely feels like they're just fucking making it as they go. And McTiernan, kind of flustered, just, and in his own macho way, just kind of turns to the both of them and is just like, we're the only ones who understand what this movie's about. And then Bruce just kind of shrugs and says, yeah, but I'm the only one who can't leave. I mean, they were just trapped.
Absolutely brilliant. They're just sort of like the bit where they're sort of like, they should say, okay, let's just blow him up. Let's kill him. Let's kill him in this movie. That would be the best end. And then you've got a trilogy. Then you don't have to keep going on. What do you think of the sort of the action movie? You know, you're talking about those transcendent movies. Where do you think it is now as a genre?
I mean, you're asking somebody who, if you go to my letterbox right now, like, I'm not really watching modern movies. I've been watching a lot of Russ Meyer. I've only seen the first Bourne Identity, but I will say this, but I have been obsessed with Bond movies lately, by the way. But I mean, I could easily poo-poo like Cinema Today, like probably every one of your guests that comes on, because it is not what it used to be. It is no longer the center of culture. We have, we live in a universe where conglomerated powers have their they have their board members who need to see profits, and so every production is either a $300 million thing or something shot on an iPhone for 9 days, and the productions in between are fewer and fewer and fewer. So it's shitty. It's fucking shitty, But that said, I mean, look, I'm at the theater often. Is there like an epic action movie that comes to mind from the last 5-10 years that I love? I mean, you mentioned Fury Road. That's a great one. I'm really satisfied with the Daniel Craig run of Bond films. Not this last one. I think this last one, it had just a little too much self-importance. Like, it had this sort of pressure to like end it. I like that he died. That's cool. Whatever. I like the dark notes, but it had this feeling that it needed to be so much more than it was. But I like the Craig films. I mean, what you know what? I haven't even seen all the Mission Impossibles, but people swear by Ghost Protocol. What have you seen that I should check out?
Well, I'm well with you on this. I think the Mission Impossible films are always sort of entertaining sort of event movies, and I'm there for that. I'm happy to sit there. They all blend together. Mm-hmm. Maybe the first two, maybe the first three are more distinct, especially two with John Woo being so crazy. Yeah. But the rest of them just feel like it's Tom Cruise going through a very protracted midlife crisis. Which I'm there for. I'm totally happy to watch them. I love the Daniel Craig ones, and I again agree with you about No Time to Die. I thought it didn't stick the ending. I thought it could have been easily a half hour shorter, yes, and it would have been a much better film. Yeah. I didn't understand why it felt the need to sort of kill Blofeld for no particular reason, and in a way which was so dismissive, having set up that character.
What do you think about the Spectre sort of retro plot of them being foster brothers?
Yeah, I didn't mind that. Only very recently I did a reread of all the novels. And in fact, there's a accompanying podcast called the James Bond Book Club, which is concentrating just on the Fleming books. And of course, that's where it's in Octopussy that you get the backstory for Spectre and the mountaineer stepfather who gets killed and what have you. So I kind of like that it sort of does dip into James Bond lore, so to speak.
So that is part of the novels, that Blofeld and Bond are foster brothers.
No, the father that he mentions is exists in the story, but not the Blofeld character. No, Blofeld exists in 4 or 5 different novels.
Yeah,
and
I'm just starting on the novels now, actually. So
well, they're really. I really enjoy reading them. I really enjoyed going back. They're full of very. They're like time capsules, they have these really strange attitudes, and almost everything about them is very different to the films, especially James Bond himself, who, instead of being this Superman, it's a little bit like John McClane. Instead of being this sort of Superman who can do all these things, in the novels, he's constantly thinking, oh no, I'm going to die. I'm dead now, aren't I? And he's rubbish as a spy. At one point, they give him a false name. And he's walking through an airport and someone's calling his name and he's looking behind him and he's like, that's me. I'm supposed to be that person. And he just constantly does that sort of really naive, It's almost like this is the middle of the 20th century and they haven't quite actually invented spying yet. There's still too much there's too much of a gentleman's code for them to, you mean I've got to lie? Oh, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try,
I can't wait to get through them. I'm wrapping up Casino Royale now, and it is a comfort, and it also keeps me off TikTok. So this is better for my brain, I think.
Absolutely. The solutions of the world are long form fiction and books, I think, and cinema will save us.
And free healthcare, I think, would be
would be. Fortunately, I'm in a country which still has a very reasonable welfare state. You pay a little, but if you don't have any money, you still get treated. So that's all good. Well, listen, I have one final question for you, Brian, and this is it. A recommended film book, please.
I have one that is just a light, dumb coffee table book that was self-published by screenwriter Tom Holland, not the Spider-Man Tom Holland, but Child's Play screenwriter Tom Holland, who was also the screenwriter for Psycho 2. And he did a very cool coffee table book on the making of called Oh Mother, What Have You Done? If anyone has seen Psycho 2, then I don't think they'll have a problem immediately buying this because they'll know how amazing that film is. But it touches on some of the tensions between the cast. I think there's commentaries out there that get a little more colorful with it, but nonetheless, it's if you're a Psycho 2 head, then it's a fun thing to flip through on a lazy afternoon or two.
Brilliant! What a great recommendation. Nobody has recommended that one before, so that's an excellent recommendation and a good opportunity actually to revisit. I love those sequels which take on massive movies. I'm thinking of 2010 as well as an example of a sequel that takes on a huge movie. Yeah. And although it's nowhere near 2001: A Space Odyssey, it's not actually bad. It's actually a good film,
Yeah. No, Psycho 2 is up there. Exorcist 3 is one. I would put The Color of Money. You could put that in there as well as one of these.
I prefer The Color of Money to The Hustler.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I totally get it.
That script by Richard Price. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. I think Psycho 2, it did well at the box office in '83, if I remember right. But it's just one of these things that people could easily dismiss because it's not Hitchcock. It feels like slasher pulp. It feels like it's just kind of one of these throwaway, Friday night date movies, or it's like a Freddy Krueger, Jason type scenario. Although Freddy wasn't out yet, but it definitely felt like it was chasing the Friday the 13th phenomenon, and it probably was. But the movie's amazing. It's a 5 out of 5 star movie. There's no question. And for those out there, I think Eli Roth actually swears that it's better than the original, and he makes a case for it. I think if you take the hyperbole to that level, then people begin to not believe you. But I totally understand where he's coming from.
Well, I would go Babe in the City. It's better than the original. That would be. Yeah, and seriously, if you've
Sure.
not seen it, Babe in the City is nuts.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
Genuinely nuts. Oh well, you'll have to come back and tell us what you think. What are you working on next, Brian?
Currently working on something that I do not have a contract finished for, so I'm
not at liberty.
I'm not at liberty, and I'm not actually going out to eat that much either. So.
Well, let's hope you get that contract soon, because it'll be something I'm sure I want to read. Thank you so much for joining me, Brian.
Thank you, John.